Three weary Americans came home Monday night. Ronald Wyatt and his sons Daniel and Ronald Jr. returned to Nashville at the end of an amateur archaeology expedition that landed them in a Saudi Arabian jail. They entered Saudi Arabia illegally, searching for the site of the biblical Mount Sinai. Ronald Wyatt and his sons are with us in the studios of our Nashville affiliate WTVF to tell us all about it. Gentlemen, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Mr. Wyatt, you there in the middle, and
yes.
Your sons on either side. Why did you, I didn't know that Mount Sinai was in Saudi Arabian territory. Why did you think it was?
We found some chariot parts that looked like the chariots found in King Tut's tomb in the Gulf of Aqaba, west of this Jebel El Lawz. We found these at depths from 60 feet out to 200 feet and over a stretch of about 1.5 miles. And we believe that that was the crossing site.
Thank you very much for joining us from Nashville this morning. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's nice to be back.
When Ron found the chariot parts in the Gulf of Aqaba, that told him that Mount Sinai lay across the shore there. So when he looked at the flight maps that he was able to get, he saw an area that appeared to be enclosed in the rim of an ancient volcano. And to the best of his figures, he came up with an area of about 5,000 square acres. And he knew that would certainly be large enough to be the camp of the Israelites. He also saw that there was another little amoeba shape just to the other side of it that he thought could likely contain the camp of the mixed multitude that came with the Israelites, because they were told that they could not stay in the camp. They had to stay outside of the camp.
Dad tried to get permission for 4 years to go to Saudi Arabia so we could prove that that's Mount Sinai, here's where they crossed, everything, the whole bit, to give everybody the whole story. And they wouldn't give us permission. And he kept applying and kept applying. They would not do it.
Our dad didn't want us to go to Saudi. We were in Jordan. He wanted us to stay in Jordan, just hang out. We had money, go eat and do whatever, just wait for him. And we said, no, you're not going. You know, we couldn't let him go by himself. So, because he said he was going to sneak over, but he did not want us to go. You know, but we pretty much insisted, we're going, you know, what are you going to do? Tie us down, make it stay, or whatever. So he let us go, and we snuck over there.
He wanted to go to the mountain. He wanted to see what was there. And they drove. And they were asking directions. And they asked one man for a Bedouin out there. His driver was asking him where the mountain was. And he told him, he said, that's Musa Mountain. The people who lived there call that Moses Mountain. And they knew they were in the right place. And what Ron saw on that first trip, there were no fences back then. There was nobody living there. And he was able to drive actually into the Holy Precinct area. They just drove right in and around, and he saw everything. He saw what looked like an altar to him. He saw a lot of stuff that day, but then they had to leave. They were run out. When they came out, they were run out of the area. And so as they got back to the border, they thought everything was going to be okay. They were just going to slip across the border. And if they were caught, what Ron had found out was that if you're caught illegally in there, they will just kick you out of the country. But it didn't happen because someone had reported them to the embassy in Washington, D.C. as being Israeli spies. During the time that they were in prison in Saudi Arabia, or in jail, I won't call it prison, at one time they came to Ron and they said, why do you think the children of Israel would come here? And Ron would try to explain to them. And of course there was a language barrier. Someone had to translate for them. But they said, we just don't understand. And they put him in a helicopter and they took him over to the seashore, and they said, "Show us, where do you think the children of Israel came across?" So while they were in the helicopter, he looked across the Gulf and he saw where Nueva Beach was. It's pretty obvious to see. And he said, "Land down there, you know, right opposite." And when they landed, right there on the beach was a granite column, looked very similar to the one that they had found back in 1978 on the Egyptian side. And Ron said when he got out and they looked at that column, it had archaic Hebrew writing on it. And he said they were all stunned, and he believed that that literally saved his life, because on their way there, they had flown very low over an area in those mountains where there were literally bones scattered everywhere. And they told Ron, you know, if you're not careful, this is where you could end up. And I don't know that they were trying to scare him or what, but he believed what they said. And he believes without a shadow of a doubt that finding that column on the beach saved his life.
A granite column that we first found in 1978. And if you look at the column behind me here, this part was laying down in the surf, and it had, shall we say, been eroded considerably by the surf. This is one of a matched pair of columns set up at the crossing site where the Habiru, led by Moses or Musa, crossed the sea. Now then, the other one is on the opposite shore. The inscription tells that it was set up by order of King Solomon, and it mentions that Pharaoh and his army were drowned by God in the waters here.
In March of 1985, he returned and was able to explore the area freely. During this trip, he saw all the things which spoke loudly of the fact that a very large number of people had once been there. The largest feature was what Ron believed to be an artificial lake, which, although now dry, held the water from the stream that descended from the mount. If you'll look at the area right at the beginning of the Holy Precinct, you'll see that it actually looks like it's been created that way. It doesn't look natural, that this has been scooped out. And Ron believed that they actually excavated a place for a lake. And around the lake, they built wells. The walls of this structure, these round, circular, 18-foot diameter structures, were made out of large stones, you know, like a stone fence or something all the way down, and then another layer like that on the inside, just natural stones. And the area is certainly full of enough rock to build anything they wanted to build. Yeah. But then they found the little bitty pieces, or they may have crushed them up themselves to put in there, and that acted like a natural filtration device. And in this lake, there is an overflow that goes north. If you'll look at it past the guard shack. And so as the water came down the mountain from the you know, the brook that descended out of the mount, as it came down and into that lake, the people could get water out of there, but the animals could also drink out of the water. And you know how animals, when they're drinking, they're getting their feet and their legs all down in there and drinking in the water. And this purified the water in these wells for the people. That is what Ron believed. If you will read the biblical account where God told Moses, soon after they got there, he told him to build an altar. And this altar was only used one time, you know, and that was when God made his covenant with his people. This altar was going to handle a lot of sacrifices, and God told him to build it of earth. And he said, and if you will build it of stone, make it of unhewn stone, because if you put your tool on it, you have polluted it. So when Ron first saw that altar, there was one L shape that was, appeared to be a fenced-in area with a middle down it. There was an opening on one side and an opening right here. And what Ron believed was that sacrifices were brought into this and then dropped off at the altar, then the person left. The other L of the altar, when he saw it, it was packed with dirt and what looked like, could have been ash. I mean, dirt turned to ash, but it was packed with loose stones on top of it. He said that this was the altar part. He said when he stood at it, it was up to maybe his waist, or a little higher than his waist. But he said that he believed that was the altar where the sacrifices were made, and that the corral part was for an orderly system of sacrifices. And the Saudis, what they did is they removed all of that dirt and everything. They just took it out and built another little wall right down the middle of it, just so it matched the other one. I will tell you about a dream that Ron told me he had. He told me that God gave him a dream. And in this dream, he was in a vantage point up high, looking down on the altar. And he saw somebody administering the offerings at that altar. And he said, I didn't know if it was Moses or Aaron. And that the altar, they were working on the long altar. So I know that Ron believed it was an altar of earth containing unhewn stone. There are these round, 23-inch diameter pieces, and they're scattered all through there. There's a lot of them. And what the Saudis that were there with Ron in 1985 told him, that there was a building there, and that it was round, and it had marble columns and a rounded top. And then they said that in the 1930s, I think it was, that was dismantled and taken to Hagel and used in a mosque. They said it was built by Solomon the Great, which led Ron to believe that the story probably had a lot of credibility, because the column, he was certain that he had found, that they had seen on the beach, that column had the name of Solomon on it, and that this one had the name of Solomon. But Ron did find a piece of white marble there with writing on it. And he definitely recognized it as archaic Hebrew, and he quickly took it up the hill and tried to bury it. It was here that the people fell back into their old ways when Moses was in the mountain with God for 40 days. Believing he wasn't coming back, they convinced Aaron to make a golden calf and an altar so they could worship the old gods of Egypt. That altar still stands with depictions of cows and bull gods upon it in the ancient Egyptian style.
Now, the Bible states that Moses broke the golden calf. He first burned it, and then he broke it in pieces, ground it into powder, which we would call gold dust, and then he put it in the water and made these people drink it. Well, we know what the folks that had to drink that were busy doing for the next 4 or 5 days, and because metal inside the digestive system, shall we say, makes you real busy for as long as it takes to get it out of there. Mm-hmm. Now, but on top of the largest stone in this altar, which is probably 10 by 14 feet at least, I'm being conservative, there's a place where something has been ground out on top of it. Well, what I saw and what those with me saw on top of this altar was a place where metal had been ground on top of this stone. And it was approximately 6 foot in length. It wasn't exact. You know, it's not a perfect rectangle because of the nature of grinding this, and roughly 4 feet wide. And I got a powerful gold reading from right down in front of this stone, so I decided, well, you know, there must be something on top of this thing, or behind it. So I got up on top, took a reading on the leading edge of it, and I still had the gold reading, a very strong gold reading. Well, it had rained a bit the day before, so this grind pit, if you please, was full of water. I jumped across that and took a reed and no reed, which meant that whatever I was reading, the gold, was between there and the other edge of the rock, and the only thing that was there was this puddle of water. Well, the sun was just coming up. We got out there real early because it gets hot later in the day. The angle of the sun on the water turned it blood red. I mean, it just looked like a puddle of blood, fresh blood on top of that. So anyway, in my mind somewhere, I recall that gold, small particles of gold, tend to make a clear, a translucent material reddish. Now, of course, iron oxide does a better job of that. And this may be something God just did, so this wouldn't go unnoticed. So I got down on my hands and knees and, you know, looked at the bottom of this thing, and there's gold dust there.
Actually ground into the stone.
Right. Yes. And so I have no doubt that that is where Moses ground this thing up, and of course the water you put it in would have had been in the stream that came down from the mountain. There are blackened peaks which are the result of volcanic activity. Now, volcanoes, while we understand basically that some heat source vitrifies the material underground in these areas, and this, of course, with this tremendous heat, it expands and it extrudes out through a vent as a volcanic mountain, or it can crack a great distance of the surface and come out as a blanket type spill from underneath. Well, out here, most of the ridges that obviously are the result of prior, you know, of ancient volcanic activity, they are of a light to darker gray in color. But right in the midst of all of this is this black, indicating that this is something unique to itself. It's not like everything else around.
Is there any possibility that the blackened peak could be maybe a plug or an extrusion that has come through?
This doesn't seem to be the case, because those that have examined it tell us that this dark material only extends down for a short distance, and that below that is this grayish material that's typical of the rest of the area around there.
So it's just right on the very top,
Right.
where this blackened, as if it were just burned and singed right there.
Right.